I'm Gary Rizzolo from Rizzolo Guitars. Welcome to the workshop. I build guitars, and guitars are an instrument that requires a whole range of things: engineering, art, fine woodworking, and it's all based on very accurate precision layouts. I've got a range of eye-gauging tools that are available at Timbecon, which I use to help set out and lay out guitar work accurately. And I'm going to take you through the way I use some of these tools today, and hopefully you'll be able to apply some of the amazing bits of equipment to the work that you do. This is the Igaging digital marking gauge. It's a very impressive looking tool. It's beautifully machined and very well presented, and it's very accurate. So at the moment I'm going to use this to mark out some purfling that I've made by pre-bending 5 lines of Vernier into a shape, and I need to saw off about 3mm clear. So I'm going to set this up to read 3.5mm and mark it out and then cut it. So if we just slide this digital marking gauge, we can see 3.5 has arrived. There we go, 3.6 will do the trick. Done. So there it's set up. You can slide that around to get it into the perfect position, but for me that's pretty well spot on. And now I can carefully mark out, and we've got this beautiful large face, and it slides on the edge of this piece of purfling, and I can scribe a beautiful line exactly 3.6mm away from the edge. So just look away for a minute while I finish marking this off, and through the magic of television we'll come back. So you can see now we've managed to cut that away from the stock material, and it's almost perfect. The way this was marked out allowed me to follow that line very accurately with the little crown saw, and we have almost perfect piece of purfling ready to inset in a guitar. So the Igaging digital marking gauge is actually a very versatile tool. What you saw was one use, and I used it to mark out for that piece of purfling, but it also comes with some attachments that enable you to use it as a compass, so you can draw circles, and it also comes with an attachment that you apply to it that sets it up as a mortise gauge, so that you can mark 2 lines ready for cutting your mortise and tenon joints. What a great tool. What I have here is a guitar neck, the blank for a guitar neck, and I need to mark out a centre line so that I can accurately cut a truss rod groove, or a groove for the truss rod. And there are various ways you can do this. I'm going to use a combination of things here just to show how you can use this wheel marking gauge from Igaging tools. This is a very beautifully made piece of equipment. It has a lovely brass stock and a polished tube with the marking wheel at the end, and it also has etched into it millimeters, so you can set up a measurement. But I'm going to set the measurement up because digitally I have used this marking gauge from Igaging to measure the width of the neck, and then to set up digitally the centre line position, which is 27.77. And I'm going to transfer that to this 6-inch square, which is a sliding square, so that You can use this as a depth stop or just simply to mark square lines, but I'm going to use it in conjunction with the digital calipers to set my measurement, lock it off, and then transfer that measurement to the wheel marking gauge. I've transferred the measurement to the wheel marking gauge, and by the way, this is a very comfortable piece of equipment. It's very smooth and nice to hold. It's light, it feels good in your hand. So we're just going to put it on the edge and just roll that down the edge, and it's just making a beautiful little indented line from the wheel all the way down the center of that neck. I can see it from here. It's very, very bright. I'll run the pencil down there so you can see it as well. No, I'm not incredibly clever and accurate. It's rolling in the groove that I just made. It looked like I drew a perfect straight line, didn't it? But there it is, the center line marked out, and that's perfect. This is the Igaging digital caliper. I use digital calipers in the workshop all the time. A lot of the time I measure Verniers and various things. I need to know that the thickness of my Vernier is, for this one for example, is 0.4 of a millimetre. This little Vernier, which is a sycamore Vernier, that's 0.55, and this one, let's see what that is, that's 0.5 exactly. So I need to know when I'm setting out my Verniers for purfling, or this for example, I need to know exactly the size that I'm using. This I've set up to be 1.76 because the finished dimension of this will be 1.6 or 1/16 of an inch. So this will go in to a guitar top. It'll be set down 1.6 millimeters, and I'll use the calipers to help me set all that out, and then it'll be scraped or sanded flush back to 1.6, so it's a little bit proud. Using these calipers, incredibly time saving and incredibly accurate. You need to be accurate. When I build a guitar, all the measurements have to be perfect, and this sort of digital reading really gives me an exact measurement. It's fantastic. I like the feel of this tool. I like the fact that it's beautifully polished stainless steel, and the buttons that control the digital caliper are color coded. So the button that turns it off is blue, so I can turn it off. That way I conserve the battery. The button that zeroes the reading back to zero is yellow, and we've got metric or imperial button in grey, so you can change from metric to imperial, and that's very handy because sometimes you can set it up to be a certain dimension in millimeters, press the button and you know what it is in inches. It transfers it for you straight away. Can't get away without these in the workshop. When you buy this EasyCal caliper, digital caliper, you can actually get, along with it, this little depth stop adjusting piece. We'll call it a piece. It's a beautifully made little piece of engineering, and its function is to clip onto the end of the caliper, and if I set this on the top, I can clamp that on, and now we have a nice base. And if I set the depth off that base, I'll get a digital reading of 3 millimeters, 3.04 in fact, but that was so much better than trying to balance this tiny little footprint when you're taking a depth reading. So this is a fantastic thing. It tells me now that really if I want to inlay anything into this soundboard, that I need to go down at least halfway. So 1.5 millimeters is my optimum. I could probably go 1.6, and I have this piece of Blackheart sassafras machined up and cut out, and that is about 1.75 millimeters thick. So if I now set up my router to be between 1.5 and 1.6, that would be ideal. Most guitar necks you'll find are not attached to the body of the guitar at exactly 90 degrees. They were always a little bit out. In the case of this guitar, it's 4 degrees. In the case of an acoustic, it's about 1 degree, 1.5 degrees. You need to be able to calculate or work out the best way to set that angle. There's 2 ways to go about that. A traditional way with a combination set, the protractor part of the combination set, and or a digital angle finder or protractor. I like to use this one because the numbers are nice and clear. It gives me a very accurate setting. This one is also quite a precision tool, and I like the way Igaging have presented the rulers and the protractor markings on this flattened off piece of metal with a very precise, fine printed or cut. It's actually cut in set of marks for the imperial measurement. So I've cut the angle of this neck. Let's check what it is, and I can take this, just try and balance it all here so you can see clearly. Try and take this to the neck angle, lock it in position, and then have a look at it. And this is telling me it's exactly reading 94 degrees, which means it's 4 degrees off 90. That's where it should be. If I do the same thing with this one, well, what do you know? 86 degrees, 4 degrees. So we're spot on. So there are 2 really good ways of measuring. This combination set comes with this little tool that enables you to find the center of a circle, and with the square that gives you 45 degrees and 90 degrees when you slide the ruler in place, and you can also adjust them for depth. For example, this smaller 6-inch version, you can slide this. If you need to set a depth, you can measure it, adjust it, check, perfect. These tools allow you to set out things very accurately. For example, this little engineer's square from Igaging, I often use this not just to square a line with the, find the pencil, square a line off using traditional method. Sometimes I will take the stock and square a line using the edge of the stock, because that is so accurate and so square. It's so well made. In the same way, these protractor tools give you a really good outcome. This one, however, luckily for us, Igaging have made these fine lines very clear and sweet on this dull grey background, so they stand out. But you do kind of get a little parallax error from the 0 mark, whereas the digital readout is spot on every time. So the digital versions of these tools do make life a lot easier because they're quick to get the exact mark that you want. Marking gauges, here's the traditional marking gauge. There are no measurements. You just have to loosen the stock, slide the handle, get it roughly in position. In the old days, you just tapped it one way or the other, got it right, locked it off. With this feels so nice in your hand. I really like it. It's a beautiful weight, it's comfortable, and it's easy to use. Whereas this tool allowed us to set up a perfect, precise measurement digitally and then use it as a marking gauge. I like this stock. It sat really well on the edge of the material so that you could scribe a really good line. So I'm quite impressed with this marking gauge. I'm impressed with the Igaging Protractor, digital protractor tool. And likewise, I really like these squares, and I like the fact that they are actually spot on, and the increments are clearly marked. The Igaging tools are available from timbecon.com.au or from their stores in Perth and Melbourne.